Hello and welcome to How Not to Play, the channel where I play Pokemon badly. Today we're going to venture back into a Pokemon Scarlet Violet Packlocke, only this time we are using Paldea Evolved. Basic rules are going to be simple. We take one pack of cards, in this case a pack of Paldea Evolved cards from the Pokemon TCG, and whatever Pokemon we open in this pack are the only Pokemon we're allowed to use in the entire run. We're also implementing some of the other more common hardcore Nuzlocke rules, such as no overleveling the gym leaders, titans, etc., no items in combat, and once a Pokemon faints, it is dead and cannot be used for the rest of the run. So let's go ahead and open up our pack and see who our team is going to be. First off, we have Meryl. Okay. I didn't, first water type I've had in a while. So yeah, that'll be pretty interesting. We have a Qfont. I don't even know what that is. I don't even think I've seen that one. But hey, let's keep going. Tadbulb, alright. I like the type coverage here. Glimmet. Okay. Oh yeah, I remember seeing one of those. Yep, that's in caves. Alright. Super Rod. Is there fishing in Pokemon Scarlet? I'll have to look that up. So that's half the pack down, and we've got 4 team members. Alright, let's see what else we can do. Voltorb, another electric type. Practice Studio. I honestly have no idea what to do with that. I hadn't thought about stadium cards and how that would affect the run. I don't know, we're going to have to think on that one. Jet Energy. Let's see, what does Jet Energy do? When you attach this card from your hand to one of your benched Pokemon, switch that Pokemon out with your active Pokemon. Maybe that would allow me to use Switch Mode once, whereas normally you have to wait for the next turn to swap your Pokemon out. Perhaps the Jet Energy card can be cashed in to swap out in the middle of, or right after you've taken out one of your opponent's Pokemon. Maybe? I don't know. We'll see. Let me know in the comments below what you think about different trainer cards like Practice Studio or the Jet Energy or even the Super Rod. Give me your thoughts. How should things like these be implemented within the run to maybe change the rule sets or apply a different level of complexity to things? But we do still have 2 more cards to turn over. Let's hope for 2 more Pokemon because we are kind of shy here. Sudowoodo, alright, that's a pretty good one. I hope, anyway. And finally, our ace is going to be Slacking. Alright, well, I've actually seen some pretty good strats with him. I wonder what we might be able to pull off. So that is going to be our team for this run. We've got Meryl, Qfont, Tadbulb, Glimmet, Voltorb, Sudowoodo, and Slacking. So let's get into the run and see what happens. First things first, let's pick our starter. Now, since none of them were in our pack, we really can't use them, but that doesn't mean that I can just pick willy-nilly. Of our team, Glimmet and Sudowoodo are weak to the water-type Paxley, while Qfont and Slacking are both weak against the fighting type that it will evolve into. On the other hand, Meryl, Glimmet, and Sudowoodo are all resistant to fire, and Slacking is just straight up immune to the ghost type that Fuecoco will become. So the best pick for our starter will be Quaxley, so that 1, neither Nemona nor Clavel have access to the hardest starter for me to fight against, and B, to force Nemona into picking Fuecoco, which will be the easiest for me to overcome since I'll be fighting her roughly 1,000,000 times over the course of this run. Speaking of which, Nemona insisted on throwing our first fight. Since Quaxley is just box fodder for my team, I don't want to use him to win any fights, so I just sit here and spam Growl, lowering Fuecoco's attack, but otherwise doing no real damage. Nemona has him put up a fight, getting me down to about 3 hit points before she realizes that I'm not fighting back, and just starts spamming Leer instead. So we just kind of sit here staring at each other for quite a while. I try to attack her a little bit to goad her into finishing me off, but she just won't. I have to run her completely out of Leer PP before she'll use another damaging move. I have never had to try so hard to lose a fight in my life. After that, we say goodbye to Mom, get a sandwich, fall off a cliff, meet a dinosaur, give Mom's sandwich to the dinosaur, follow it into a dark, ominous cave, because that's smart, get attacked by dogs, get saved by said dinosaur, get Fireman carried to safety like a sack of rice, and finally make it to the lighthouse, where we meet Arven. Now, despite all of his bluster, he is once again completely intent on throwing this fight. Once again, he only attacks enough to get me down to 3 HP before spamming Tail Whip to lower my defenses. I'm not entirely sure how wagging your tail at somebody can lower their defense. Okay, well, I guess that's one way. But once again, we just sit here staring at each other until he runs out of Tail Whip PP and is forced to use a damaging move to finish me off. After rubbing salt in the wound, he throws Koraidon's Pokeball at me and runs off anyway, saying that he's my problem now. Gee, thanks. Heading out to Area 1, I catch my first actual team member, Arthur the Azurill, who will eventually evolve into my Meryl card once he likes me enough. On the other side of Los Platos, I also run into a Bondslot. Now, Little Jones isn't a Sudowoodo yet, but one day he'll perfect the art of mimicry, and I'll have my second fully fledged team member. Speaking of which, if you can guess the naming convention I'm using in this video, be sure to put it down in the comments below. Also, I would love it if you'd hit those like and subscribe buttons as well. But that's all I can find for now, so we head off to school, only to be stopped by Nemona, who wants to battle some more. She leads her Fuecoco, which I'm not terribly scared of, as my entire team is super effective against it. Arthur starts off taking some weak tackles from the Croc and getting a defense drop before taking him out with 3 Bubble Beats. Then Tommy comes in, and I'm fairly confident Arthur can survive a Terra boosted Thunder Shock, which he does on 1 HP. After getting a defense drop with Tail Whip, I swap Jones in, who takes a Thunder Shock on the switch, and another one before he can attack, leaving him at just 2 hit points. But he knows Flail, an attack that does more damage the lower your hit points are. That, combined with the defense drop Arthur gave us, creates the perfect storm for Jones to kill in 1 hit. On the way to school, we meet a girl getting bullied, learn how to terrestrialize, use it to beat up the bullies, and then when I finally make the first day of class, it seems like everyone wants a piece of me. Arven wants me to help him find herbs, the mysterious Cassiopeia wants me to fight Team Star, Nemona wants me to take on the gym challenges to become a champion, and the Pokemon researcher Professor Sada wants me to take care of her Koraidon. Looks like this is going to be an interesting school year. Heading out the west gate towards our first gym, we meet a nice girl who taught us how to set up a picnic. After giving Arthur a nice bath to improve our friendship, we finally get him to evolve into our Meryl. Now, the gym battle itself, I'm not all that worried about, because Rock Smash Bug. Speaking of rocks, our next objective is the Rock type Claw. On the way there, Jones evolves into our Sudowoodo, and rock types like these being weak to water, I lead with Arthur when I finally do find the Titan, who sends the giant crab pecking with just a few bubble beams. Chasing the Titan down the cliff, we meet up with Arvin, who has his own water type to play with. I terrestrialized Arthur for the double stab bonus on Bubble Beam, but Arthur's Terra type is actually Fairy. So, oops. Thankfully though, Arthur still doesn't take too much damage from Rock Smash, and with both of our Pokemon using their water attacks, the Titan goes down pretty quickly. Arvin then gets his herbs, makes a sandwich, and Koraidon guilt trips me into giving it to him. But now he can run faster, so I'm sure Sada will be pleased. Up next, however, is the Grass Gym. And with Grass being super effective against both water and rock, I may need some help. So I proceed to smash Koraidon's face into every tree within a 5-mile radius, giving him a concussion, but finally knocking a slack off loose. Except he's too high level to actually help me out. Thanks, Gar. So I backtrack a bit to pick up a Tadpole from along the river, who is also one level too high. So Leslie goes in the box too. My one saving grace here is that grass types aren't exactly known for their incredible defense, being weak to fire, ice, poison, bug, and flying. Looking over my skill sets, I do notice that Arthur does have the flying move Bounce, but it's at 85% accuracy. So I head past the Grass Gym all the way up to Levincia City, where I can purchase a wide lens, and hope that the accuracy boost I get from that will be enough to get me through this gym. I start off by terrestrializing Arthur into a fairy type to shed his grass weakness. Being faster than Petlil, he bounces up very nicely, avoiding a sleep powder, only to not one-shot and get hit by it anyway on the next turn. After not one, not two, but 3 turns asleep, getting Mega Drain, Arthur finally wakes up and finishes off his opponent with a second bounce. Smoliv is up next, and once again does not die to a single bounce. Arthur goes down to critical HP from Razor Leaf and finishes Smoliv off with a second attack, but now comes Gracias's ace, Sudowoodo. Not really knowing what else to do at this point, I just go for another bounce and actually do outspeed, but don't do near enough damage, and Arthur dies to a crit Trailblaze. Not that he needed to crit, but anyway. Jones comes out, but Gracias's Sudowoodo has the advantage, and even a max damage flail from 1 HP isn't enough as I lose my entire team. But this was just the practice studio, right? So now, having practiced this gym battle and knowing better what I'm up against, let's try it for real. This time I lead Jones with Stone Edge, a move with an increased crit chance that actually does one-shot Petalil with a crit. And it takes Smoliv out too. So then I use the jet energy I got out of my pack to bring Arthur out on the switch into Gracias's Sudowoodo, and we both terrestrialize. Now Arthur is actually faster, so Bounce goes off first, landing not only some damage, but a paralysis as well. So without being able to get Trailblaze off, I still outspeed the second turn, and Bounce takes him down to half health before he does break through paralysis and hit me hard with the Trailblaze, boosting his speed. I am a little worried here, but because paralysis also drops your opponent's speed, I'm still faster. So after another bounce attack, Gracias gets paralyzed again, meaning that one final attack is all we need to clear the gym. Now after that amazing performance, Arthur gets to evolve into an Azumarill, and rightly so. Great job, buddy. With the level cap increased, we are now able to take Leslie out of the box and go hunt down the Open Sky Titan. A critical terrestrialized Thunder Shock almost takes it out in one go, but instead Bombardier gets a second hit in, taking Leslie down below half HP. Arven joins us again for Phase 2, and thankfully, the Titan decides to pick on his Knackley instead of finishing off my Tadpole, letting Leslie ground the bird for good with 2 more double stab Thunder Shocks. Arven gets his herbs, makes a sandwich, and Koraidon just stares me down until I give it to him. But hey, at least now he can swim. Crossing the river on the way to our next objective, we find a Thunderstone at the top of a windmill. Now Leslie can use this to evolve, but is that something I want to do? You see, a Tadpole can have one of 2 different abilities. Own Tempo, which prevents confusion and could be very handy in the Iono fight coming up later, or the ability that Leslie actually has, Static, which paralyzes anybody that hits her. Now this, being a very good defensive ability, combined with her bold nature that boosts her defense stat even more, means that she is very well positioned to be a good, tanky member of the team. So I use the Thunderstone on Leslie and evolve her into Bellibolt. Knocking on Team Star's door, we find ourselves face to face with Giacomo, and I lead off with Arthur. Now Arthur knows the move Rollout, which starts off pretty weak at only 30 base attack power, but it doubles every time that it hits. With the Wide Lens accessory equipped, we can make sure that that happens every time. I start off with the Defense Curl, which actually does double the initial rollout turn to 60 base power, which doesn't do a whole lot of damage to Giacomo's Poniard. But ramping up to 120 base power for the second turn, we do make it halfway through his HP bar, and the third turn at 240 base power easily takes him out. Giacomo's Starmobile is up next, and the downside to Rollout is that I cannot select any different move or swap out Pokemon for 5 turns or until it misses, which we've made sure won't happen. Intimidate from the Starmobile does drop Arthur's power by 1 rank, but the huge power ability that he has gives him a good power boost anyway. Plus, Rollout is now up to 480 base power, taking nearly half of the Starmobile's HP on 1 hit. Now I can't swap out until Rollout finishes, so Arthur has to stay in and take 1 more hit, which takes him all the way down to 4 HP before a 960 base power Rollout tears the Starmobile to pieces, defeating Giacomo and disbanding the Sigwin squad. We head next to Iono's Electric Gym in Levincia, but Nimona stops us for a warm-up battle first. I lead off with Arthur, who knows Aqua Tail, which most of her team is weak to, and with Wide Lens equipped, it hits every time. I mean, not much of a warm-up, but that does remind me that our level cap is over 22 now, so I can take Gar out of the box and evolve him into a Vigoroth just in case I need the extra body for the gym. We start off with Jones against her Wattrel, easily taking it out with a single Rock Tomb. Then the real fight starts, as she sends out her Bellibolt. So I send out my own, Leslie. I start off with a substitute to absorb some damage as I use Mud Slap to lower her accuracy. Iono does get some hits in, and I have to send out a second plushie and use Slack Off to regain some lost HP before getting her Belly Bolt accuracy all the way down to -6. Now with a 2/3 miss chance, it's time to swap in Arthur and start setting up for the grand finish. Now I thought that the substitute would remain when swapping out Pokemon, but I guess I was wrong about that. So I terrestrialize Arthur to remove his electric weakness before dropping his own plushie to take any hits that might make it through while setting up defense curls so that when the sub does eventually fade, the next one will have a stronger defense to last even longer. After getting up to +5 defense, Arthur swaps to Amnesia, increasing his special defense just in case the Mismagius at the end of this run does get some hits in. Once he's up to +6 special, he goes for the final defense curl to buff the only attack move on his skill set. Rollout. A Belly Bolt goes down to a 60 power rollout, and Luxio does get some hits in on Arthur's substitute, but it holds through not one, but 2 bite attacks while rollout continues to power up, steamrolling the poor pupper in the process. Now, I thought for sure that Mismagius' Terra-boosted Charge Beam would take it out completely, but the little plushie that could holds firm, while a 480 power rollout puts the Ghost Witch back in her grave. It appears that somebody conveniently placed the TM for Rain Dance just outside of Team Star's Firebase, and since that's where we're headed next, I immediately teach it to Arthur. Because you see, Mela's Torkoal has the Drought ability, which sets up Harsh Sunlight, which boosts fire attacks and weakens water attacks. Arthur's Rain Dance ability does the exact opposite by making it rain. So, a single rain-boosted Aqua Tail is enough to wipe Torkoal straight out. While Mela's Starmobile gets off the Screech, lowering my defense, while Aqua Tail takes more than half of its HP, leaving Mela exactly one shot to take me out. But because of the rain, her Blazing Torque barely tickles, and Team Star's mighty Skidar squad falls to a single Azumarill. With Arthur dominating the first half of this run, I figure it's time to get some new faces in here. So I head on north of Levincia to East Area 3, where we can find Barry the Electrode, Clark the Cufant, and just off the coast in the ocean, I go fishing for Orm the Aracuda. Now, even though Glimmet does spawn more frequently in the path to Alfornada, with a little bit of luck and a lot of patience, we do find Copperhead the Glimmet in a tunnel here in Area 3 as well. So with the rest of our pack now caught, it's time to level everybody up for the Steel type. Along the way, Orm evolves into a Barraskewda, and we are finally ready to face Orthworm. Against the lurking Steel Titan, I send out my own Pokemon of Steel, Clark. Orthworm's Wrap attack prevents me from swapping out, and I forget that it has the Earth Eater ability that will nullify the otherwise super effective ground attacks. So Clark tries the super effective Brick Break instead, which does about a quarter of its HP. The chip damage from Wrap does start to pile up, and thankfully Clark is able to dodge Iron Tail not once, but twice, eventually forcing the giant worm to flee with one last karate chop. Arven shows up for phase 2 with his Toad School, and I make another mistake, accidentally clicking the rock move rollout, which Orthworm resists. In addition, I am now locked into this move until it misses, doing hardly any damage at all for the first couple of turns, even with Arven's Toadstool lowering its defense with Screech. But with the rollout damage increasing, Arven makes another 1000 IQ play by confusing Orthworm with Supersonic. Hitting itself in confusion, this battle is now a 3 vs 0 as Arven starts damaging attacks with Grass Knot, and Rollout finally starts taking a good chunk of HP. Finally, we take him down on the following turn. Arven gets his herbs, makes his sandwich, and gives it to me like I have the option of not feeding it to Koraidon. But hey, he can jump higher now. Up next is Kofu's Water Gym, where Barry starts us off, now a fully evolved Electrode. He outspeeds Kofu's Veluza, doing pretty good damage with Electro Ball, and then finishing it off with the second one. A similar story with Wugtrio, although he has taken a couple of hits by now, so when Kofu's Crabominable takes the field, we swap out with a Volt Switch to do a little bit of damage and bring Leslie in to take the hit, which does a lot more damage than I was expecting. Kofu does, however, remind me that Terrestrialization is a thing, so taking one more hit and going down to 4 HP, Leslie shoots back a Terra-boosted Spark Attack, which doesn't quite kill. I can't keep her in, so I swap out to the only Pokemon I can rely on to tank a Crabhammer, Arthur. But instead, he just dodges it completely. Now at this point, even a half damage Aqua Tail is more than enough to finish off the battle and grab our 4th gym badge. With reports of Team Star acting up in Tag Tree Thicket, it's high time to pay them another visit. Atticus leads off with Skuntank, which is known for using Sucker Punch, a move that will only hit if you are attacking it. So to avoid that, Orm uses Focus Energy to boost his crit rate instead. Atticus, however, makes the brilliant move of using Toxic, and guessing that he will then follow it up with Venoshock, which does extra damage to poisoned enemies, I use Drill Run for the second turn, easily outspeeding and one-shotting with a critical hit. Muck goes down to 1 crit as well, and Revavroom after it. But taking increasing damage from Toxic, Orm can't handle a hit from the Starmobile, so I switch out to Copperhead, who resists the incoming poison attack. Being weak to Steel, I predict he will use Spin Out next and swap in Leslie, who resists. At this point, I set up for the long haul. With Substitute, Reflect, and Leftovers healing, I begin chipping away with Mudslap, lowering the Starmobile's accuracy in the process. I of course reapply Substitute and Reflect as needed, eventually getting Atticus down to -6 accuracy, and then swapping over to Arthur, who sets up his own Substitute, and starts lowering the Starmobile's attack with Charm. Finally, with all the setup complete, I swap out to Leslie for one final Reflect, and then my finisher, Clark. Being a Steel type, he is immune to all of Atticus's poison attacks, meaning that he can only use Flame Charge, which unfortunately Clark is weak to. But with all the setup we've done, and some leftovers recovery on the side, the only thing I'm really afraid of is a crit, which of course he gets. Now that would have killed if not for Leslie's Reflect, so rather than swapping out, I decide to trust in the plan, and Clark is finally able to bulldoze his way to victory over the Navi squad. With that taken care of, it's time to resume our gym challenge. So to prepare, Clark evolves into Copperaja, Copperhead into Glamora, and Gar into Slacking. We interrupt Larry's lunch break, and I send out Clark, whom I intend to sweep with. So I set up Iron Defense, while Larry's Kamala puts me to sleep with Yawn. But I was prepared for that, and taught Clark Sleep Talk, an ability which picks a move at random for him to use. Those moves being Sleep Talk, Iron Defense, Rest, and Brick Break, which almost one-shots. I queue up another Sleep Talk, but wake up instead. Larry puts me back to sleep with another yawn, and I decide to finish setting up the +6 defense before taking a Sucker Punch to the face to finish him off with another Brick Break. I do fall asleep, however, and leftovers heal up the Sucker Punch damage while Larry sends out the Dunsparce. Clark takes a super effective drill run straight to the face, but doesn't wake up, as Sleep Talk keeps picking non-damaging moves for him to use. Eventually, though, Clark does wake up, finishing the fight with a couple more Brick Breaks. Larry then sends out his Ace Staraptor, but even a Terra-boosted Facade barely does any damage at all, and Clark ends the battle quickly with a critical hit, earning our 5th gym badge. But it doesn't end there, as Nemona wants to fight us immediately afterwards. With no time to reorganize my team, Clark is first up against her Lycanroc. But this isn't much of a problem though, as her bite attack does very little damage. But it does flinch, so Clark can't attack back. Nemona follows up with a second bite attack, which also flinches. Now there's no way this could happen 3 times in a row, right? So I queue up another Brick Break, and it finally connects. A second hit finishes off the dog, and she sends out Palma, which is a fighting type now, which Steel is weak to. So I swap out for Leslie, whose Mudshot attacks make quick work of the electric type. And her only 2 Pokemon left are now both special attackers. So I have Leslie set up a light screen before swapping out for Arthur, who takes no damage at all from the dragon attacks, being a fairy type himself. And 1 Play Rough is all it takes to force Nemona's Ace. Unfortunately for her, fire types are weak to water, which Arthur also is, and a single Aqua Tail is enough to finish her off. From here we head up to Rhyme's Ghost Gym, and I was terrified of this one because I have no idea how to plan out a double battle. So I just start things off by terastallizing Orm just to get the Omni boost from the crowd before diving down under the stage, avoiding Mimikyu's slash attack as well as Clark's bulldoze attack that hits everyone. He puts a little bit of damage on Banette and breaks Mimikyu's disguise after taking some minor damage himself that is mostly healed by his leftovers. Orm then pops up from his dive, taking out Banette in the process, while Clark sets up Iron Defense, not wanting to damage Orm with another bulldoze. Houndstone comes out next, and I rinse and repeat. Orm dives down, while Clark stamps out another bulldoze, doing decent damage all around. Houndstone then uses Phantom Force, disappearing and causing my dive attack to miss, while Clark sets up more defense. Rather than repeat past mistakes, I go for the Dark Attack Throat Chop, which is almost guaranteed to kill Houndstone, while Clark just sits there maxing out his defense. This brings out Rhyme's Ace Toxtricity, which she immediately terastallizes into a Ghost type, which is great for me, because that means Throat Chop is a one-hit kill, and Clark's Bulldoze finishes off Mimikyu, thankfully not Orm, and collects our 6th gym badge. Alright, well maybe this was a little bit easier than I thought it would be. After that, I find myself in the Asada Desert hunting down the Quaking Earth Titan. Since ground types are weak to water, Orm decides to take matters into his own, fins, with one dive attack taking half the Titan's health before getting slapped hard with a knockoff. But Orm is a lot faster and finishes Phase 1 with another dive attack. For Phase 2, Arven brings out his Scovillain, which reduces the Great Tusk's speed, of all things, before getting knocked off by a knockoff. Orm's dive does a second third of Great Tusk's health, before taking a pretty weak rapid spin. Orm goes for his third and final dive, which low rolls and doesn't kill. Oh, that didn't. Oh my god, no, not knock off. Oh my god. Oh no. Oh, that was so close. So with all the luck in the world, Orm survives on 1 HP to finish off the fight. And that wasn't a friendship save either. He legit almost died there. But Arven gets his herbs, makes his sandwich, and shares some with his dog. So now if I don't share mine with Koraidon, I look like the bad. I said share! That means I get some. You know what? Never mind. At least he can glide now. On our way to the Alfornada gym, Nemona corners us for a rematch, but with the exact same team. So we use the exact same strategy. Clark takes out Lycanroc with Brick Break, Leslie buries Pawmaw in Mud Shots, sets up Light Screen, and then swaps out for Arthur to play rough with Sliggoo. Skeledirge gets a heavy crit in that scared the crap out of me, but ultimately he loses to Aquatail once again. We finally get to challenge Tulip's Psychic Gym, and I lead off with Gar, whose Throat Chop nearly takes her Farigiraf out in one shot. But the next turn he loafs around because of his Truant ability, instead of finishing her Pokemon off. But he chops it down on the next turn, and Tulip brings in Gardevoir. And because Gar is lazing about, gets a free shot in with Psychic. At this point, I could probably soak up one more hit, but not a second one from Truant. So I queue up Rest to restore his HP, but after 2 more Psychic hits, Gar is back in the red, and I can see this isn't going to work. So I swap him out for Clark, who resists Psychic attacks, and his Steel typing attacks are super effective against her Fairy typing, taking her out in one hit. Espathra, however, is pure Psychic and a lot faster, so she gets off 2 Shadow Balls before Ironhead can take it out. Tulip's ace, Florges, looks to be a good matchup on paper, being a Fairy type, but she takes her first opportunity to terrestrialize it into a pure Psychic type, and with the double stab bonus on her attacks, I'm not sure Clark will hold up, and swap in Leslie to take the hit instead. She gets hit again hard before she's able to get Light Screen up, and I can't risk her taking another hit, so I swap out for Barry. Foul Play doesn't do nearly as much damage as I thought it would, so I Volt Switch back to Clark, who now has the protection of Leslie's Light Screen, which reduces the damage enough that I can take a little rest, restoring his HP. From there, Sleep Talk will queue up any random attack move, which is enough to secure our 7th gym badge. And last but not least is Grush's Ice-type gym. Because Ice and Flying are both weak to Rock, his Frostmoth doesn't stand a chance against Copperhead's Power Gem. But because she is quad weak to Beartic's Earthquake attack, I swap her out for Gar, whose high physical defense and large HP pool allows him to easily tank the hit. Even though he is slacking off every other turn because of his Truant ability, I'm not really worried about him taking too much damage thanks to his leftovers and the Drain Punch TM. With Beartic down, the Titan comes out next, and he is also weak to fighting type moves like Drain Punch, and goes down after a couple hits, bringing out Grush's ace, Altaria. Focusing in on its flying type, I bring out Clark for the super effective rock type rollout attack, figuring that will just close out the rest of the fight. But I forgot to give him the wide lens, so he ends up missing and breaking the chain. Which is when I realized that Altaria's ice terrestrialization made it weak to steel as well, so I queued up the Ironhead attack that I probably should have just used to begin with, and just like that, we have all 8 gym badges. But before we head back to Mesagoza, let's finish up with Operation Starfall. Ortega leads the Fairy base, starting off with Azumarill. Leslie sets up Reflect to reduce the incoming damage, but just dodges the play rough anyway. And the magnet I bought in Cascarafa boosts Leslie's Thunder attack, taking out Azumarill in one shot. Wigglytuff is out next, and Thunder's 70% accuracy causes us to miss while taking a play rough to the face. She does connect the next round for pretty good damage, and then we Volt Switch out to Barry, taking Wigglytuff out and bringing in Doxbus. I made this switch specifically because Barry is the only Pokemon I have that can outspeed the Pastry Puppy. And Thunder doesn't do enough damage though, and Barry takes almost half his HP in a single play rough, but does inflict paralysis with his static ability, and we Volt Switch back to Leslie. Our Reflect has worn off at this point, so I take a turn off to set it back up before Volt Switching back to... Oh, right, the Starmobile isn't treated like a Pokemon, so Volt Switch doesn't actually switch Pokemon here. So we Volt Switch again, this time bringing out Clark, who resists the Steel-type rollout attack, doing a heavy hit with Iron Head before Confuse Ray hits. Clark does hit himself in Confusion, but I'm not terribly worried as Reflect and Leftovers are keeping him alive. He hits himself again before finally breaking out of Confusion to land one last Iron Head, ending the Rookba squad for good. And the last Team Star boss is Aerie, the Fighting type specialist. She leads with Toxic Rogue, who shudders in anticipation as he knows that Orm's Psychic Fang attack will one-shot him. And it does. However, Aerie's next Pokemon, Pissimian, can easily kill Orm with a close combat attack, which Arthur's Fairy typing resists. We then terrestrialize Arthur to shed the water type and its weakness to Pissimian's Seed Bomb attack, while setting up defense curls to reduce damage and Aqua Ring to help restore some of his HP along with his Leftovers recovery. By the time I get up to +6 defense, I'm actually gaining more health per turn than her Pokemon is dealing. And because Pissimian has been using close combat this whole time, which offsets its normally high damage output by lowering the user's defenses, their -6 defense allows a single Draining Kiss to take all of their HP and heal Arthur back up to full. Aerie sends out Annihilate next, who also goes down to a Draining Kiss. Lucario comes out next, who is a special attacker, which I'm a little bit afraid of, but Aura Sphere does barely any damage and is completely healed up by Draining Kiss, and all Aerie has left is her Starmobile, which is a purely physical attacker, and as a fighting type is also weak to Draining Kiss. So it's only a matter of time before Aerie's Starmobile is in the scrapyard and the Cap Squad falls, leaving only the big boss standing in my way. But before we finish them off for good, Arven needs our help with one last type. Dondozo, as a water type, is naturally weak to electric attacks, and a single Thunderbolt almost one-shots him, so naturally he swims away. Arven shows up for Phase 2, and I start off with a Light Screen while Greedent lowers Dondozo's defenses. Thunderbolt again takes out a good chunk of its HP, killing it on the second turn. But Dondozo wasn't the actual threat, as Tatsugiri shows up for Phase 3. Muddy Water hits us pretty hard, lowering our accuracy before I can get Light Screen set up. Another Muddy Water lowers our accuracy again, causing Thunderbolt to miss. Now I can't handle all of these debuffs, so I Volt Switch out to Barry, who hits with a Thunderbolt for way less damage than I was hoping for. I hit him again before a Dragon Pulse hits me back hard, and Greedent's takedown attack kills itself with recoil damage. Thanks for the help, Arven. With Light Screen wearing off, I don't think I can take another Dragon Pulse, so I Volt Switch out for Gar, who gets hit hard with Muddy Water, lowering his accuracy. But Gar can't be bothered to care about all that, and hits with Drain Punch anyway, finally taking out the false Dragon Titan. Inside the cave, Arven gets his herbs, makes a sandwich, and I don't even harbor the hope that I'll get any. Nope. But Crichton can climb now. Arden gives his sandwich to his Mabostiff, who is now healed back up into top fighting shape. Well, we'll see about that in a minute, but first I have a date with the Elite Four. Rika's ground types are first, so we teach Arthur the Trailblaze TM we got from Brassius to take out his Whiscash. Donphan is next, who goes down to Aquatail, almost. Dugtrio is up next, and we do outspeed thanks to those two Trailblazes from earlier, taking it out with another Aquatail. Camerupt meets a similar fate, and finally, Rika sends out her ace Clodsire, whose water absorbability means that I have to swap out with Gar. Rika typically starts Clodsire out with a Protect turn, so we get a damage-free swap. Using Seed Bomb on the next turn finishes off the fight pretty easily. Poppy brings out her Steel types next, and Gar has no problems taking out her Taparaja with a single low kick. Corviknight is out next, and while Gar is loafing around, he takes a hit. I see that he can probably take another one, and he is able to do some hefty damage back with counter. I leave him in thinking that he can take another 2 body presses, which he does, and counter finishes off the armored bird. There is no way that he survives Bronzong though, so we swap him out for Clark, who easily tanks the incoming Zen Headbutt before setting up Iron Defense. He gets hit hard with a critical Earthquake, making me seriously rethink my strategy, but I keep him in, opting for Rest to restore all of his HP. The incoming Earthquakes don't do nearly as much damage, and leftovers are enough to keep me relatively healthy until Clark wakes up to continue setting up Iron Defense, further lowering the Earthquake damage. Finally, up to +6 defense, Clark rests one more time, going back up to full health, and taking almost no damage from Earthquake now, leftovers healing at least half of it back. Once we wake up, a pair of body press attacks bring out her next Pokemon, and Magnezone dies to a single body press, or would have if not for his sturdy ability, setting up a light screen against special attacks before dying to another body press. Unfortunately for Poppy, body press is a physical attack, and her ace Tinkaton falls to a single hit. Larry comes out next, sporting flying types now. Gar, however, outspeeds his Tropius, taking it out with a quad-effective Ice Punch. His former ace Staraptor comes out next, dropping Gar's attack with an Intimidate. Close combat does pretty heavy damage, but has a side effect of lowering Staraptor's defense, which actually allows Ice Punch to one-shot him as well. Altaria tries to do some damage with Dragon Pulse, but just falls to another Ice Punch. When Oricorio comes out, I decide to give Gar a rest, bringing out Copperhead to fish for an Omni Boost with Ancient Power, which doesn't happen. Without that, I don't really have much chance against his ace Flamigo, so I swap out for Barry instead. Barry survives a close combat, getting the paralysis with his static ability, and this lets me swap Arthur in against the now slower Pokemon, taking it out with Ice Spinner TM we got from Crucia's Ice Gym. Against Hassel, I give Orm the spotlight as one of the fastest Pokemon I have. He easily outspeeds Noivern, taking it down with a single Ice Fang, as Hassel brings out Dragalge. Ice Fang doesn't kill, and Orm takes a huge hit from Thunderbolt. A second Ice Fang finishes the job, but Dragalge's Poison Point ability gets the last laugh as Orm falls to poison damage. And I take my first death. I don't really have time to grieve now though, as Hassel's Haxorus is already on the field, waiting to crunch Clark. He sets up Iron Defense all the way to +6, stabilizing his health with leftovers, before Body Press stomps Haxorus back into his ball. Flapple sets up a Leech Seed, before Clark Body Presses it into Flapple Juice, leaving only Hassel's Ace Baxcalibur. I'm not sure if he can finish off the fight and swap Gar in to soak up the incoming attack. Not sweating the next Glaive Rush, which puts him into the red, Gar retaliates with a huge counterattack, doubling the damage that he receives, finishing off the Elite Four assessment. Only one obstacle stands before me in this tower, and that is top champion Geeta. Espathra outspeeds Arthur, and Lumina Crash does pretty hefty damage, almost killing him on the second attack, but Aquatail ultimately takes the Ostrich down. With Gogoat out next, I swap over to Copperhead. Horn Leech does rather poor damage against the Rock type, but triggers Copperhead's Toxic Debris ability. Sludge Wave doesn't quite kill, and Geeta tries to bulk up, but Gogoat just falls to another Sludge Wave anyway. Avalugg is out next, getting poisoned on entry by Toxic Debris, and I decide to try something a little different. I start out with Leslie, who takes a pretty hefty hit before she's able to set up Reflect, and swap out to Gar. I use the Reflect turns to set up Bulk Up, but before the poison damage takes Avalugg too low, I finish it off with a Drain Punch to keep my own health up. King Gambit comes out next, but because of the setup, Kowtow Cleave only does about a quarter of his health, and retaliating with another Drain Punch heals Gar back up to full. Drain Punch is not going to finish off the Water-type Veluza though, but Stomping Tantrum does double damage if my last attack failed, which thanks to Truant, it did. In addition to being super effective, a single attack is enough to bury the fish and bring out her ace Glamora. Unfortunately for her, Sludge Wave doesn't do nearly enough, and a double power, quad effective Stomping Tantrum easily kills Geeta's last Pokemon, finally earning us the coveted champion rank. Now for the end game, we go up against each of our three friends, starting with Arven. With Gar's bulk up strat actually working on Geeta, I decided to see how bonkers I could make it. Now Arven's Squovit does inflict us with paralysis from Body Slam, but the damage output is so insignificant from spamming bulk up that our leftovers are able to keep us pretty healthy. Gar does get fully paralyzed a couple of times, which I find out does still trigger another Truant turn, but eventually we do get up to +6 attack and defense. At this point, any attack, Drain Punch for instance, one-shots the squirrel and brings out Garganical, who sets up Stealth Rocks. Not that I plan on swapping anybody in anyway. Drain Punch knocks out Salt Stack, and Toedscruel actually does some decent damage with Earth Power before also dying to Drain Punch, healing most of it back. Scovillain does a pretty hefty Fire Blast, almost killing Gar, but he does survive on 8 HP, gaining a lot of it back with his next Drain Punch, but giving me pause once Cloyster hits the field. Now the Clam only has physical attacks though, so I trust in my setup, and another Drain Punch brings out the newly healed Mabosstiff. Well, that didn't last long. Sorry, pup. After that, we head back to school to fight Cassiopeia, the big boss of Team Star, only to be stopped by Director Clavel. Copperhead outspeeds Oranguru, doing pretty good damage, but the monkey likes to put Pokemon to sleep with Yawn, which actually gives me one more turn to finish it off before falling asleep. But a held Chesto Berry wakes Copperhead back up as a bomb of snow comes out. His ability makes it snow, which will mean that his Blizzard attack is a guaranteed hit. But once again, Copperhead outspeeds, and Power Gem kills before a bomb of snow can do anything. Gyarados is up next, and its flying type makes it weak to Power Gem 2. And then Clavel finally sends out a Pokemon that I can't one-shot. Poltegeist's Shell Smash modifies multiple stats, including upping its speed, letting it go first the next turn, burning Copperhead with Will-O-Wisp before dying to a second Power Gem. Houndoom is out next, and I swap out for Berry, chipping in with some Volt Switch damage before bringing out Star. A Drain Punch finishes off the dog while healing him back almost to full for Meowscarada's entrance. Now I wanted Gar on the field already, although I suppose a swap-in turn and a loaf turn would amount to the same thing, as he takes 2 Flower Tricks either way before he can respond with a super effective X-Scissor, which doesn't OHKO. Oh right, when Meowscarada terrestrialized, it dropped its dark typing, so Bug was only 2 times effective, not 4. Whoops. So I swap in Clark, who is about the only Pokemon I have who can take a hit or two, surviving on only 5 HP before finishing the fight with literally any attack. Whew, that was a lot closer than it needed to be. Going inside, we head up to the schoolyard to find out that Cassiopeia is actually our good friend Penny. And I make another mistake. I forget that Baby Doll Eyes is a priority move, so a Terra Play Rough does not one-shot as I thought it would. At -4 attack now, I know that Liquidation will not kill her incoming Flareon. So I pivot out to Leslie, who can take a hit, triggering her static ability, before Volt switching back to Arthur, who can now outspeed and kill with a full power Liquidation. Vaporeon is weak to grass, so I try a Trailblaze, which does way less damage than I was hoping for, taking a huge Hydro Pump in retaliation. Thankfully, Arthur is faster and able to finish her off with a Terra boosted Play Rough. Jolteon is out next, and Baby Doll Eyes once again lowers my attack, preventing Play Rough from killing. Jolteon is able to dodge a second attack, but is more focused on lowering my attacks rather than making any of its own, and Play Rough finally connects on the third attempt to finish it off. Leafeon is out next, and Arthur is at -6 attack at this point, so naturally I swap him out for Berry. Volt Switch brings Arthur back in at full power, taking a Leaf Blade and getting his attack lowered again before Ice Spinner can finish it off. Penny's Ace Sylveon is all that's left, and I give up on trying to sweep with Arthur, bringing Clark out instead. He takes a pretty heavy Moonblast despite it being resisted, getting outsped and getting hit again before a single heavy slam is all it takes to disband Team Star for good. And of course, Nimona wants one last fight now that we are both champion ranked, so she can go all out. Lycanroc sets up Stealth Rocks, which will damage my Pokemon whenever I switch out, while Clark sets up Iron Defense. He tanks a Drill Run while Heavy Slam finishes off the Wolf. Pawmot comes out next, which does have a super effective close combat attack, but the defense drop from it will let Clark's Play Rough kill in retaliation. Orthworm is up next, and with as much damage as Clark has taken, I decide to swap out for Copperhead, who easily takes the body press that would have killed Clark. Predicting an Earthquake next, though, that will kill Copperhead, I swap immediately out to Gar, who takes barely any damage, and gives him a turn to bulk up before Orthworm can use the super effective body press on him. Gar takes a turn in between slacking off to slack off again and regain some HP before bulking back up, making the incoming damage much more manageable. Eventually, I am able to get all the way up to +6 attack and defense before finishing the worm off with a massive Drain Punch. The Dunsparce uses Coil, which is basically bulk up with an accuracy boost, but he has too much ground to cover and my maxed out Drain Punch easily takes it out. Goodra meets a similar fate, leaving only Nemona's Ace Skeledirge. Now, he does get a good Torch Song in, but a single +6 Throat Punch will quickly end its singing career and prove to Nemona that we are indeed a worthy rival. You might think the game is over at this point, but there is one final boss. We need to stop Arven's mom, AI Sada, from flooding the world with Paradox Pokemon. Her first Paradox, Slitherwing, uses Lunge to lower Arthur's attack, which means that Play Rough no longer kills. Zen Headbutt makes him flinch, but eventually he is able to finish off the prehistoric bug with another Play Rough. Fluttermane comes out next, and I swap into Clark, who tanks a Thunderbolt and a Mystical Fire, almost getting KO'd, but coming back with a super effective Heavy Slam in one shot. Brute Bonnet is AI Sada's next Pokemon, and Gar is mine. Earth Power barely does anything to him, while X-Scissor straight up murders the mushroom. I swap out to Copperhead to deal with her Scream Tail, because she resists the incoming Drain Punch, and Sludge Wave does pretty good damage. She does take a heavy hit from Zen Headbutt though, before finishing it off. AI Sada's next Pokemon puts me in a bit of a lurch though. Sandy Shocks is fast, and Copperhead is one of only 2 Pokemon I have that are faster. So I keep her in using Mud Shot to drop Sandy Shock's speed, even though I know she will die to the incoming Earth Power. I am so sorry. But Arthur outspeeds the now slower Sandy Shock and can finish it off with Liquidation. But my heavy choices are not over, as Roaring Moon is another super fast Pokemon. And I only have one Pokemon that's faster, and Arthur is not it. So I swap over to Leslie, hoping that he'll queue up Dragon Claw or Night Slash to trigger her static ability, but he uses Earthquake instead. Unfortunately, Leslie is not the one Pokemon I have that is faster and dies to a second Earthquake before she can do anything. Barry, however, enters in a flash, equipped with Wide Lens to boost Thunder Wave's 90% accuracy so that it will never miss and always paralyze. He easily outspeeds the Ancient Dragon and misses somehow, and then dies to an Earthquake. I needed that paralysis, because without it, nobody else can outspeed this thing. I do have one final hope, though. I send out Gar on a clean switch, bought with the blood of half my team, hoping that he can take a hit. Dragon Claw does a good chunk of damage, but does not kill, and Gar is able to play rough enough to defeat the AI and save Paldea. And so we discover that a single pack of Paldea Evolved can indeed defeat all of Pokemon Scarlet, though just barely. Now, I'm not going to lie, when I opened up Meryl in this pack, I completely wrote him off as a pretty weak Pokemon that wouldn't be able to do anything. I had no idea how much of a powerhouse he was, becoming a pillar of my team in almost every fight. And even though I knew Slacking had some pretty beefy stats, I was honestly floored at the versatility of his moveset. To be honest, That's probably the main reason I enjoy this particular type of challenge run. The extreme limitation of Pokemon makes you use mons that you might not even look at otherwise, or forces you to use them in new and interesting ways just to get through the next fight. Now, if you like this too, drop a like on the video and comment down below if you have any similar stories of Pokemon that you thought weren't all that good but ended up being complete superstars for you. While you're down there, click that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications whenever I post a new video, and I'll see you there.